you know what's working here and what's not working though, Thomas? Do you have any thoughts on it? Any idea?
Sorry, I had my mic off. But yeah, I was sharing this with like my friends to see like what they thought of about it, and they were like looking at it with the reference and stuff, and they're saying that the shadows still seem very dark, and that they're at least with my references having like the yellow lighting in there, I'm not bringing enough of that into the scene, and so that's kind of where they're at, and I would have to agree on that.
Okay. So let's first look and understand what's going on with your reference, right? Obviously, you might need some technical understanding eventually to do it a bit more accurately, like controlling the softness here and the specs, you know, how to do that and things like that. But what's more important for me and for you as well is understanding what you're looking at, right? These are very soft shadows and these are very soft light, you know, these are not very harsh type of light going on. And if you kind of look here, you're pulling it off here because of the distance of the light, but you can also notice here it's pretty bright, it's pretty harsh, and then you have the shadows obviously as your friends notice as well, and I do agree with it. The shadows are pretty harsh. You can see this is called overclipping for me. It's when it's too bright and you're kind of starting to lose the detail, right? So circle, red, too bright, aka white clipping. Okay, so this area here, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you look at your references, there's not really that harsh light there. It's very soft, it's very diffuse, and you want to make sure that you have the same kind of detail when you're doing it, right? That's the first thing as well. And obviously the shadows, as they notice, if you look at the shadows here is a bit darker, but it's not really that dark either. It's not like it's super dark. If we have a close look, you know, it still goes in, you can still see the shape and the texture. Here goes a bit in the darkness, but if you really look closely, it's not really that dark here either, right? So if you go on the purple, not totally black and dark, purple circle. Okay, so here, if you look, you can actually see the door opening. You can actually see a certain rim light here, spec light. These are some of the things we will be focusing on a lot more as we continue these sessions, because the more you see it, the more you analyze your images. Actually, now that you zoom out, and I can, if you pay attention, now you can actually see the details much easier because I pointed it out. You can see the opening a lot easier, you can see the rim light a bit easier, you can see the bottom as well actually. So these are the things I want to emphasize a lot in the first few sessions in the coming time, is your ability to spot this on your own, because I don't want you to depend on me all the way, and I want you to get ready and, you know, go on your own path as quick as possible naturally. Here as well, you want to pay attention to the type of color, right? And you want to pay attention, do you actually have the right color? So if you want this warm light, is it actually the same? Do you think it's the same?
Like currently, no.
So this says 246, 250, 280. So warm light, it says around, let's say around 240, 240, 220. 240, 240, 220. And if you look at yours, let's see. This one is actually more towards the green. This one is 204, 222, 135, right? Which might be intended, but you also have a green light in the background, so you're conflicting the color, right? When it comes to color palette, there's a very bright green light in the background, and then you have another one in there. But if you look at your references, there is pretty much the same type of green going on, and then you have breaking off both material wise, which is on purpose, and the color of the light. The same here, you have the same type of color of the green light, the cyan type of if you look at my Joko tutorial, you actually get to learn how to post process and color grade this exactly like this actually. And you have the warm light. So these are the things I want you to pay attention to when you pick your color. I want you to pay attention that is it actually the correct color. If you don't want to use it, that's cool. I mean, you don't have to, but at least you have to be aware of it, right? So the blue circle, which is certainly black. Let's make sure we get the blue one here so we can see it. So the blue circle, pay attention to your color choice and color contrast. It's kind of important. Did anyone join or leave? There's suddenly 3. Oh, Fateh, you're also here. Nice. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Come again. So blue circle, very important. Same here. We want to pay attention. Is the green actually the same green, right? So here is a bit difficult because you don't have actually a really good source of green, so you have to kind of base it on what we call average calculation, and you can do it if you go into Photoshop and you use like a pattern filter or something like that, and you can average it out afterwards. Basically, you can then get an average. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go exactly on the highlight. It says 123, 230, 188, right? So let's say the average green color is 110, 216, 176. Okay, and then if you look at yours, it might actually be close enough in some of them actually, but the value might be off. Okay, so you have 227.
Amit, what this session be recorded?
Yes, I'm recording right now as well. Yes. So it's also so you guys can rewatch the beginning and some other stuff as well. 212, 224, 229, right? Again, there's 100 in difference in saturation. So you want to make sure this is balanced out, and this alone will start improving your scene. But again, this is your reference. You don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but it's because you want to make sure you're learning properly. Keep in mind that there's another warm light on the right side coming out from this window, which is like I don't remember the movie, but you know there's an external light here as well, which is leading the eye. These kind of details are useful to pay attention to. Does any of this make sense?
Yeah, that all makes sense. And a lot of the times when I'm picking color, I'm typically just eyeing it. So I'll probably have to get a little bit more technical on how I choose my colors.
And are you baking or are you using real-time light right now?
This is all baked.
Right. So obviously you want to work on the bounce light and maybe even use fill light. So in that context, that means because before we started the session, I was just messing around to get an idea of the scene, and you want to make sure you have enough bounce light to cover all the dark areas to a certain extent that you can see the environment. And before you came, I was playing around with like shadows just to familiarize with my scene, to kind of lead the player, have some contrast, but relevant contrast in terms of color palette. Basically, this is not baked whatsoever, so I don't want you to follow this. But this is in the future you will learn to do this as well, where you use certain settings on light to fake it, and I will show you how it looks like if I turn off these two. This is how dark it gets, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm doing it is so you can understand what to look for. What are you trying to fix? Yes.
Do you use inverse square fall off for the lighting usually?
I rarely turn it off unless I really have a good reason for it. But yes, it is possible to do it if you want to do it. There's nothing wrong in doing that. You could use it. You could turn it off here if you wanted to, and then you could reduce the settings, right? Because you don't necessarily want to fall off here. So in this case, I might do it, but I kind of like it to be realistic as much as possible, so I will keep it so it kind of falls off. Also, I don't know if you turn off the post-process volume, Thomas, in your...
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I deleted everything just to kind of, like everything that was affecting the image.
Yeah, because it does looks quite different on this default, which is doesn't look very
right.
appealing. Does this make sense as well? That you want to make sure that you fill in the dark corners around the source of the light. And also in this level, you probably notice it, but I probably wouldn't use all of the light sources. I do recommend you don't spend too much time placing them yourself unless you want to. But I wouldn't you see, I don't keep this on. I turned that off because I thought that was a bit too much, having all of these lights in one place. It doesn't really do much. You kind of lose the drama and the contrast. I decided more to do like darker. And you can see things in the shadow. I cheated here because I don't really like this in, and it takes ages to bake. So I was just trying to show you the principles, what I want you to do. So I cheated with a skylight, and I just picked a random HDR cube, and I kind of 250 intensity scale is quite a lot, but whatever. For now, we just want to practice and make sure we kind of understand. So this is basically what I did, and the reason I did was just to quickly again show you how dark your images are, and what I want you to pay attention to, right? Because if you look at your images, either it's too much light, actually, that's another thing we want to talk about, is also, is there too much light on top of everything? And in this case, it always goes black. What's with this black obsession here? Red. So red circle here in this image. Too much light. Think about shape and form using shadow and light. Okay, so what do I mean? I mean, it would be more interesting if there was a certain gradient, if you kind of kept this darkness and it kept going in to this area, meaning if it just kept going like this way, right, you would have more interesting shape and form. So you did it kind of like here, it's more interesting. In this angle, it might still be a bit too much light, but it's interesting that it fades off to darkness, but not complete black, right? We still want to have something more to it. Here it goes a bit dark. Here you can think about adding more type of light, to just what we call prop light, right? Prop light is more about not really using it to throw a lot of light around. Prop light is more, what I'm trying to experiment with here is more of a prop light. It's to create interesting shadow or to create interesting detail in the background, right? So here my idea is, okay, you start the game here, super dark. So I kept this. Obviously I wouldn't keep this level of darkness, to be honest. I really don't like pitch black stuff, so I will probably add this very quickly, and I will stick to color temperature, so I would like try and match it like so, and I would look for the light source, or if I couldn't find the light source, I would really cheat and I would just crank this up as much as possible, so it looks like that it's a bounce light basically. And I will kind of match it a little bit, and I would also turn off shadow. So you don't really know I'm fucking cheating. I'm a cheating asshole, And you want to put it like to a certain extent that it lights up the path a little bit more. Make sense? And then you suddenly see, you can see the details. I turn it off. It's too dark. No, it's okay. You can get away with it. The person playing the game is walking around, seeing the detail, cool, seeing something over there. You can have a look. Maybe it's too dark. In this case, I would probably, again, I wouldn't do this in your case because I want you to do it in the baked way. I just want you to, I'm just using real time light so you all understand, to train your eyes, right? I want you to understand what you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, but I want you to do it obviously with the bake setting, which means it's a different workflow, and you don't have to worry this much when using bake, because if you do bake correctly, it's gonna bounce around and it's gonna do most of the work for you, right? So maybe you want to go like, okay, it's too dark over there, so you go, okay, maybe if I figure out a way to fill in the light a little bit. So how you're gonna do that? What's the best way of doing it? Are you gonna cheat here as well, or are you gonna just do a little bit of hint? How far are you gonna push it? And then you kind of go tweaking it a little bit to the point where you figure out if it's working or not, right? Turn it on, and then you go, okay, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much, okay, 800, okay, it's starting to feel like it's fitting in, it doesn't feel like it's a hot spot, so you want to make it dimmer, right? So when you cheat like this, which you don't have to when you're doing static, very important, is what I want you to understand is the gradient, the inverse square law. It's just falling, right? It's just falling into the darkness, and that's kind of what I want you to understand here. Is you want to do it with one light. When you do the static lighting, you want to make sure that it's bouncing around enough, and then only then do you add enough light afterwards to fill in the extra, which would be static in your case too. So this would be static, and this would then be jumping around a bit more, so you wouldn't have to keep adding quite expensive point light, because you don't want to do this workflow where you have point light and stuff, because these are one point light is 6 spotlight, right? If in case you didn't know, which is super expensive, so you don't want to do that normally. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does everyone else, is this making sense to you all as well? Yes? No?
Yep, it is.
It making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes sense.
Makes sense, right. And here you can see it's very dark, so you would do the same thing here as well. You would pay attention to, is it dark? Do you want it dark? Is it too dark, right? So you would maybe take another spotlight. In this case, you are doing it with static again, so you would figure out how to do it statically speaking, and you also want to make sure you have the right type of settings, right? So you're kind of, okay, I want some fill light, but you really want it to be like super subtle, so you might be like, okay, how do you do that? You would like place it around, maybe increase it a little bit, you know, and kind of figure out the best way to do it without overdoing it, so it's just subtle, like super subtle.
Okay.
Right? So when the player goes, it's not like super dark. And then the idea is you go there, you get, okay, what's this? Is it open? Can you get in? And you want to make sure you also, from a level design point of view, that you have leading lights. So you don't necessarily want this there, or even this there, this bright anyway. If you wanted the character to go down here and check what's going on over here, right? So that's also something you want to keep in mind from a level design type of lighting, is where do you want the player to go, right? Do you want them to be confused? Because it's a bit confusing. If I keep this one here, it's conflicting me a little bit. I'm going, okay, am I supposed to go in there? Am I supposed to go in there? Where am I supposed to go? So when I look at that, I go, maybe, I need to dim it down maybe a little bit even more to kind of not make it so crazy. And
Right.
so the player is more of an extra environment, as I say, prop lighting. So there comes key values, which we'll look into in the future as well. And if you watched the first video, you might remember we talked a little about it. So now you have to obviously balance this contrast and amount of light. Again, backlight should be popping around a little bit to do that. Or you could also think about that you want this light to be dominant, right? So you might be going, okay, let's do 6,000, and let's do, because when you don't do bake like I'm doing now, you have to cheat like I'm doing now. You have to learn. That's why we're doing static and bake for a while first, so it does the work for you, right? So you don't have to worry. So we kind of, this is more of a bonus lesson to make sure you understand that what you're doing is faking the bounce, which you sometimes have to do in projects. So your idea is to kind of understand how the light fades. So now you can see it's not too dark, it's going into the shadow, and then suddenly there's light. Turn it off, it's super black, right? There's a huge difference. And of course you can use this soft radius if you don't want specs, which I would recommend when you're faking. You don't want to reveal there's other stuff going on, basically. Yeah, and you can you just keep doing that stuff. Make sense?
Yep, makes sense.
Cool. So that's kind of what's going on here. It's too bright. There's a lot of darkness. Where you should have more darkness, as in the shadow gradient, you're missing it, right? We want to have some more here as well. Don't want to overdo it too, and you also definitely don't want too much of a bloom If it's so bright, then you expect it to be super bright as well, right? That's how our eyes work. So you want to look at the reference and go, that's not a lot of bloom. That's also not that much bloom going on in the distance. This one is pretty bright and it goes pretty far, you know, but she's blocking it. So there's compositional rules going on here as well. Soft light, and I already showed you what to do with the soft light. You use soft radius to get that kind of softness to it, so you don't get these hard specks that you have, because you can see these are not a lot of specks going on this reflective surface. There's not a lot of speck going on this reflective surface, despite it being of you know, very reflective surface. It's marmor or whatever you call it. You know, you can see here as well, they don't have that high spec as well. You can see it here as well, that there's light coming down. There's a bit of fake light. You can see there's a front light on purpose coming in, because you can see the shadows. So obviously cinematography is a lot of cheating as well, right? But you have to remember, in cinematography, our eye sees from 1 to 20 in range, so to speak. In most video cameras today, if you're lucky, you have an expensive one, it goes up to 15, but average is 12. So what does that mean? It means that's why you have these black stuff in movies. It's not because they always choose to have it, it's because technology wise and after post-processing, this doesn't get any brighter. Okay, because if this get brighter, what's gonna happen? Do you know? Anyone wanna guess?
Everything gets brighter.
Yes, then you have overclipping. So they choose to have black clipping. That's more wanted in movies rather than what you have going on here, which is like too bright, right? But you have both. You have both too bright and too dark. So you want to find the contrast balance, basically.
Okay.
Let's see this image. Did anyone else have any image? Because David's images, I'm just gonna record afterwards. After I ask you guys to have a nice day, I'm gonna go through his on the same video, so and give him the feedback without taking too much of your time. So let's take this image, which I put somewhere. Let's go into Photoshop just to land this even more. Get into the goal. Really make sure you guys understand.
Right.
Because I don't know if you really understand until you really understand. So we want to make sure we go the extra mile here. And you had today this one. Okay, so let's see if I can pull this off. Sometimes I don't pull it off, and if I don't pull it off, it's just because the image has too much of not enough information, basically. So let's try it out. So the first thing I want to do, I want to check your levels, and you can see too much dark, right? It's going off the chart. See that? It's so much that you can't even edit it. So if I make it brighter, you can see it's still a lot of darkness going on. So to get rid of that darkness, I can't even do that, right? So that's how I know before going into, of course I'm experienced, I don't really need to go in and have a check, but this is for you to understand that I do look at your images like this ahead of time if I'm unsure before I speak my mind. But I can, obviously you can see yourself that you have almost nothing of information on the left right side. So if I keep pushing, it's gonna get white clipping instead. So this is white clipping, right. And this is what people some do. They have, luckily you don't have this much, but some students will have this much because they put the light and they pay attention to here, but they don't pay attention to the material, how it affects the light, and how to deal with that, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to cheat a little bit, don't want to make it too flat, but you can see because there's so much black information and I'm trying to edit it, you're also losing a lot of the contrast, which you probably might want or not want. But if you look at your references, it's not really dark. I mean, it's quite lit, most of them. Of course, this one is dramatic, so that has to be. This one is about isolation, so they have purposely framed her in this opening, and they purposely made it dark, right? And then they use the spotlight, fluorescent spotlight in the background that's even brighter, so you have she's dark in the front, but you have a backlighting, right? So that's the concept that's they're doing in this context, just so you understand also the composition, because in the future when you do your portfolio, you might want to pay attention to your camera shot and the story you want to tell. So that's what's going on here.
Right.
And it's not actually these lights are coming down. There's actually an extra light here that's doing this, but you think it's coming from there, but it's not. You can see from the hotspot it's super bright there, and then suddenly it's bright here. That tells me that there's an extra light that's covering this area basically. So that's what's going on. So it's not really bright, right? Can we agree on that? This is not really dark, contrasty in the sense that you need to go this dark. Are we in agreement on that? Because you have to pick now. You have to pick which way you want to go. You can do both, but I don't recommend right now you go both, because that means you have to go into the environment and you have to pick where you want it. And as you see in a game environment, that's not always a good idea. You want to have a certain level of darkness, and a lot of people they feel very uncomfortable when they do lighting, and they make everything dark. They think horror is dark. No, horror is contrast and color. You can have it. This doesn't look comfortable. This doesn't look comfortable either, actually. This looks weird, you know, and there's no super darkness into it. It's about the color choice, the balance, the frame, and you can make it feel a bit, you know, daunting. So here we're trying to even it out a little bit. It's kind of cheating. Then we want to darken it down a little bit just to see if we can do that. Of course, it's very hard because this information is off the chart, so it's kind of difficult to do that. And if I go to hue saturation, I just want to quickly do a grayscale, and I want to just see the difference. So what I like with before we edited it is there's a certain darkness in the front, and then it goes into brightness. Okay. So what we want to try and do, see if we can pull this off with my push Photoshop skills. Can you just burn? And I'm just gonna make sure I don't use the highlight, use the midtone. We're gonna use grayscale because the colors are a bit too much and they're confusing. So we want to just use this grayscale, and we just want to paint over what you've done, just so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to express here. Again, this is just my experience and my opinion. You don't actually have to do everything I say, of course, but hopefully you will agree that there's a difference in the way we do things. Touch tool, then maybe, you know, there's like a bit more brighter here to kind of lead the player or whatever, right? And then you might actually want to make this brighter. It doesn't look as good because I'm obviously not covering all the ground. So let's do a bigger one. Okay, and this one, of course, I think there's always no information for me to use here to make it brighter, unfortunately. And that's a warning when I do editing of these images like I'm doing live now, is if I can't control it, there's a problem, right? There's a problem if I can't control it and do the necessarily edit of these things. Photo is coming and going. Okay, cool. So do you need this light in the background? That's also questionable. Do you want it to place it differently? That's a different question altogether as well. So you want to make sure that you have this level of detail and contrast, so you don't have like just flat or everywhere. So you want to think a little bit about how you're going to pull it off to make that kind of distance. So I don't know if you can see the difference. There's more value and there's more shape and form when you don't, because you see yours is kind of grayscale, it's kind of flat, if that makes sense. Right. Yeah. And if you look at my quick paint over, there's a certain hotspot, and then there's another hotspot, and then there's a little bit darkness in the middle, right? And that's kind of what I want you to think about. And if I just quickly do a different, you can see there's a different tone also because of the color, and you have a little bit dark. Obviously the paint of sucks ass, but that's a different topic. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look. Did you have another one here? Let's have too much bright in it. This one could be interesting as well. So that's this one. You also want to work on your composition, like the choice of camera and angle. You don't really want to clip out these items, for example, and the like stuff like that. You want to pay attention to kind of avoid. So if I use exposure, you can see I can't even. So I'm using exposure and I'm going up what we call 2 stops in camera language, and you can see this one is already burning out. So even though I'm managing to get some information out using this method, you can see that this one is too bright. So if you had dim it down, I could start manipulating even in Photoshop to get the look I wanted, but I can't, because it's already so glowy and so bright and contrasty in comparison to everything else, right? So it's the same things I want you all to remember and pay attention to, right? Is this is super dark, and that's okay. But in this case, if you really wanted it like this, and that's okay, let's do the opposite. Let's give you a different point of view, right? So you want it to be darker, maybe that's fine, all right? But then you have to really push it, so you still get this gradient going on, right? So if this might be difficult to see if you're not have the eyes for it, so just make it grayscale for you. Okay, so maybe you go all the way dark. Maybe we go into the shadows and say, okay, really make it dark, and we kind of keep pushing it. And maybe we also push over here a little bit, go into the midtones, and kind of you know, if you want to have that kind of fun, why not? You can't even it's having struggle dealing with this in this layer, so that layer is not, it's not gonna work on this layer, so we're just gonna stick to this layer. That should work better. So maybe you want to keep this a bit darker, because we're talking about making things a bit more brighter and avoiding the dark shadow, but that doesn't mean you can't do the opposite. But then again, it's the same principle. It's about understanding how to get this to spread out a little bit. Obviously I'm overdoing it, but I just really want you guys to see the difference. Okay, so we made the edge darker, even though I said not to do it, and because if you do want to do it, that's fine. But it's obviously taking a lot of the information out because it doesn't have a lot to work on. But do you see the difference between this and this? You're leading the player with a line. You're also making sure that you have it dark where you want to have it dark. Obviously the color brow is not really working either, so maybe you want to you know, try a different color or different saturation and see if you can get away with, because editing ruins a little bit when you use this this kind of method. So I would definitely look at the colors a little bit as well, to be fair. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to give some input? Anyone else have other opinion than what I've said? Anyone disagrees? Or I mean, there's no right and wrong answer right now, because now it's more about talking about these things and understanding what's going on. So anyone else want to pitch in? Like, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a different vision? I want you guys to also be able to voice your thoughts, because you obviously have different experience. Some of you are 3D modelers, some of you have done other stuff, some of you have been doing painting. Anyone feel comfortable giving your thought, or even agreeing is fine, just to see where we are at. Or if you disagree, that's fine too. No? I'll let you guys sit in silence a little bit and think about it.
Someone just said they didn't understand what you said with the internet problem. So
All right. Who was that?
Fateh?
Sorry, Amit, I didn't understand what you said because my internet kept crashing. So could you repeat that?
Do you have any opinion on any feedback for Thomas, like about what I've said? Do you have any thoughts yourself, from because you already had a few more lessons as well? Do you have any thoughts? Do you like it? Would you do something differently, uh, based on his references? Do you have anything input to give?
Uh, Not really much, honestly, because I've started a different route with the reference gathering, and it's more based on a theme and less on capturing colors from the selected movies. So I'm taking a different route, so I cannot honestly
How about the
comment
images?
much
Do you
on it.
think it's too dark, too bright?
There are dark parts, yes, and the areas that go dark have almost no values between them. So those can are part of the issues, and could be something related to the direction. What do you want to convey with this image particularly? So if you can elaborate on that, then I'll better understand of what the
Hmm. So
feedback should
that's
be.
for you, Thomas. What are you trying to achieve in these images? What are you trying to show?
Um, I don't know. I guess I don't really have a direction, but
Yeah.
I was just kind of going off the reference and just doing the best I could to match it.
Hmm. So that's a good learning then,
So
because if you don't have a
most people,
direction and Fateh doesn't get this answer, one, he can't really give you the guidance he might be able to give you, but also I don't really know the main direction. Of course, I know you some of your direction because you have references, but you also want to think more closely about it. So Fateh, you were saying?
sorry, I've lost you guys again.
Yeah, you wanted to say something, Fateh.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to know where do you want the character to lead? Like there's a pathway in there are two separate directions. So basically it's a T junction, right?
A what?
So my
T junction.
confusion is like
Yeah.
if I'm going towards this direction, I wouldn't know what the objective of this particular scene would be.
Mm,
Like, what do you want me to do in the scene?
right. Yeah.
So
Guess I didn't think about it that way.
so
My basic concern is usually related to like the character pathing. So it's more like that.
Okay.
so what he's saying is
So yeah,
just to
now it is getting better. So we have some sort of a gradient there, so we know where you want the character to move towards. So it's, yeah.
Right. Right.
I'm just explaining what he's saying. So I'm sure you understand his feedback. I don't disagree with him in terms of level design lighting. Um, you could have had a light in the middle that's just going down, but because it's an image, it's also you want to remember it's an image, so obviously it's different. But because you picked this composition, you obviously want to make sure um, there's a reason for it, and the direction. So I don't necessarily, from a level design point of view, I don't necessarily disagree um, with his feedback to you that if you want the player to go there, maybe kind of make it obvious that that's the direction. Even then, I also want you to remember again, even here, is that a reflection of this?
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. Looks like a reflection.
that's so mind fucking. I was like, is it too light? What's going on? Okay, so you want to make sure that the player go there, but sometimes you might play with the color a little bit, so this area is maybe a bit more different version of the green color basically, so
Okay.
it's kind of breaks off this monochrome lighting. Monochrome lighting is good though, you can keep doing it and everything, but then it's even more important that you really understand the gradients of everything that's going on here,
Gotcha.
right? Makes
Yeah.
sense? Is it good?
Yeah. 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 That makes sense.
And I don't know, maybe even like really make this side pop, and maybe even have like some kind of, I like this one, so how here it would be cool to kind of maybe reconsider the placement of the light a little bit, or dim this one down so it's kind of weaker, and you would make sure the emissive is weaker also, and then maybe you have another like light somewhere to kind of pinpoint this one, because I think that's the story, right? It's saying quarantine, no entry, no removal, and then you're kind of telling the player to go somewhere else. And I think that could be cool to pay attention to the environment and tell your story as you're doing your. So I just want to make this one a bit darker actually, because it is kind of bright. Kind of hide this one as well.
And like another important factor when you're using the light, from like what my experience is that don't crank up the values of intensity too much. You want to start like low and then build up upon it if you feel like you need more light or not. So for example, in this scene, the original, you can see that there was a bit too much intensity, that you lost all the details around the lamp and also on the opposite side. But then you have other places where it's too dark, which is, in other words, it's pitch black.
Right.
And you have no details there either. So I think you can use the attenuation radius, including with the indirect bounce, I think it's called, because I haven't done static light for a long time. And it should be able to bounce pretty nicely in there, that corner.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks. You see the difference?
Right. Yeah. 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 I see it.
It's still quite bright, to be honest, because the light is right next to the corridor, so it is. I wouldn't be too. Would even maybe go as far as just pushing it down just to see how far you can kind of make it not as bright. I think that could be interesting because it is kind of bright, or just shift the angle a bit down or place it maybe even in the top could be interesting. So it's just lighting down nicely. There's a gradient to it as it goes down. That could be interesting too, and I probably would do it just because it's easier, than.
Thomas, what sort of feeling were you going for this particular shot?
The feeling?
Yeah.
I think it was just
What
gonna
sort of mood?
the mood. So just based off the reference, I was kind of just really into that that grungy kind of I don't know. I don't know if the feeling I'm trying to think of is the right one, but like grungy, kind of depressed kind of thing. Sort of what I was going for, just based off the reference.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously not doing a bad job or anything. So I'm just trying to get an idea of how far you can push it with just one light, basically. I just want to make sure that it's clear, it's super bright. So there's obviously, this is a lot of lumens, but that's because I have a different settings I'm trying out for this particular scene. And I think
I do have a question. So the difference between lumens, lux, and candelas, does that affect the way the lighting interacts?
No, it's just easier for you to find the information depending on if you want realistic lighting or not. So you would go online and you would be like lumens, fluorescent amount light, right? And you would go into the website and it says the color. So you would put on 2007, that's the color, right? So you go here and you go, okay, that's the color I want. So you go 2700. Of course it's not going to look exactly the same because I have some crazy stupid setting going on, cheating stuff going on here. So if I go to my tint and take away the tint, and if I take away this and this, that should be fine. So that's the original color. So that's basically what you do, and then you go, okay, most of them will have some information somewhere, at least on the production website of the manufacturer. Will also say how many lumens there are. So that's, this one is, I believe, 430 lumens. That's not a lot, is it? So yeah, so that's why you do it, so you can kind of get the information. So it says 470, 2800, a K. So you kind of use these when you're doing more accurate type of lighting. We're not doing it necessarily in this particular case, but you will pick up on it, especially when you do the daylighting and things like that. You will then have this opportunity of being more particular. Right now I'm not too picky, because I just want you to learn to see it and do stuff correctly. The amount really doesn't matter when you're learning what to look for, because then you don't depend on all this other stuff that we kind of are told that we need to depend on, but you don't really need it if you know your way around what you're looking at. And
Okay, cool.
So just want to get an idea of how this scene works. So maybe like, because I'm not following your reference obviously, but you know, I might go like with the blue light over here, right, to get some shadow. And there's definitely something odd going with this scene, because I rarely have to go that high when I do my stuff. But that's a different topic.
By the way, Thomas, good job on the entire scene, honestly. I'm just not that good at giving feedback.
I appreciate it.
So, you know, so basically what they're saying, the others, Fatea also in this case, was saying, you know, you want to think a little bit about how you want to lead your player and create the shape and form in such a way. And, you know, it's okay to cheat a little bit. I mean, you don't have to be like super accurate at the moment on what you're doing and how you're doing it. You know, you can kind of have a light, and you can use the smoke to your advantage. You can show a little bit and kind of lead the player. Obviously this is real-time light, so it's not gonna have all the bounce light included. There's a fence here, so maybe you want the opposite actually, just because I think these fences actually kind of give some cool shadows, sometimes depending. This one has a two-sided shadow one, so guess not. Cool. So yeah, there's different ways of doing it, you know, so you can like have the bright there, but then you can have like a little bit fill light there to kind of give the contrast. Make sense?
Yeah.
I do think this one is bright. It's a lot of adjustment when you do it, like when you're starting to do it a bit the way we actually do it professionally. You don't just put in the light and go, yeah, that's good. You kind of explore it. You kind of look at, okay, it's too dark. What do you do to deal with it, and stuff like that. You can actually go dimmer too, but then you really need to focus on the fill lights that you want around as well. Kind of, you have to make sure the colors are correct as you do it, right? And you want to make sure the soft radius doesn't reveal that you are a cheater like me. You can, you know, you can play around. You might go, okay, I want a blue color because there's blue there, and you can get like these nice. You see this? It's you get these nice gradients, and when you mix the color and you know the color palette and color theory part, you know, they go in right very nicely, and then they mix into the shadow, and it becomes like not completely dark shadow, and it kind of gives you this mood and this tension, right? And of course, where is it? There's a big difference when you actually put the camera in as well, right? When you put a camera in, you can start manipulating the shot a little bit to be more, you know, interesting as well.
Right.
And you can see this is pretty dark, which I did like very quickly, and but you can see the tubes, you can see the stuff, and you would probably fill in a little bit, if possible, but not too much because of the darkness I purposely picked in this example. You can see the lights going, and then here it's too bright, leading the player, and you can use a different technique to get this form. Of course, this is too dark, which Alan was saying, so you could either increase the distance. Now, why am I not doing what he said? Well, because I have a good habit, obviously, because I'm using real-time light, and when you use real-time light, this range and radius, you don't want to do that. So why don't you want to do that? Again, you guys will be learning a lot of this over time. This is not good. Okay, that's why I'm very particular in telling you don't do what I'm doing. I'm picking particularly on teaching you what to see, creating form, function, story, mood, direction. But this level of light is like super bad. You don't want this. Is gonna crash your game, and it's not gonna be good at all. So this is closer to what you want, like green at most. But this, you can see, okay, there's too many lights there, so you would actually have to like figure out, okay, there's too much, delete. Okay, it's getting better, but soon you don't even have any lights, right? So this is why I'm telling you do the static, because it's not gonna pay attention to this unless you are doing stationary. It's gonna do both, right? So then you have to pay attention to it even then. And also remember, you do 4 stationary, and then you keep going. On the 5th, you're gonna get an X. What does the X mean?
It means the shadows are being calculated accurately.
It means you have 4 overlapping stationary, and it will now either be movable or static. I don't actually remember which one it goes to, but it stops being stationary basically. So what you need to do is you have to pay attention to how many overlapping lights you are working on, so when you're doing your level lighting. So you want to kind of move them around. And that's actually why I already ahead of time had this light only, and I removed this light, turned this one off, because there was too many lights already. So when I turned it on and I had the other light, this was X, and it was just easier. Make sense? So there are a lot of these things, again, you're gonna learn as we go on. I don't want to like overcomplicate, but I thought today would be like fun to do a different session where we kind of go in Unreal a little bit, outside of Unreal a little bit, do different stuff like that. As you know, probably, because I already showed you guys, you will continue to improve, and as you improve, you will be masked lighting, and as you continue the course, you will be doing the polar facility eventually, right? And you will have an opportunity to show me a bit more specific after you actually watch how-to videos more specifically, right? So this is like, as you do the course, you will be able to go on and do this kind of lighting where you have the shadows, the contrast, the fading, all of these details, and for daytime in this case, right? So you have exciting times ahead. You're definitely going to learn it. So as you go on, you will learn everything you need to do the post-processing correctly, right?
Do you find interior scenes easier or exterior scenes?
I mean, it doesn't matter to me because I've done the exterior as well. So when you go out, it's correctly calibrated. When you go in, it adapts. If you go into the darker area, it just keeps adapting, right? So for me, obviously, it doesn't matter. I would say exterior is easier because it's like outside, right? So once you get it outside, it's done. It's not a lot more to do unless you have some buildings and you have to make something more interesting for that. That's still there because that's how we measure if it's working or not when we look down. But you'll learn that as well. So yeah, so hopefully this looks cool enough, you know, to get to this level where everything is actually adjusting accordingly, because a lot of the freelancing, at least, and the projects that are happening these days is very exposure heavy and realistic heavy, so you need to be able to know how to have the settings ready and how to measure it and all of these things, and how to deal with the lens flare correctly, and then be able to edit it. So when you edit it, there's less work basically, because you've done the basic lighting, so it's easy to change the color and the intensity a little bit to make it into night time. You'll learn to fix these materials, as I said, and how to edit this emissive and have a control over it. So it's good stuff. David, here's your feedback. Too dark, right? I didn't give any references, so I'm just gonna go by my default opinion. Alright, so what we have here? We have here, right? Here, 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 here. More or less. Red circles, very dark, or losing detail. We generally want to see the material and shape. Some of these are good, like the column is good and the floor is good, but there is a huge gap between ingredients. Okay, so what does that mean? Good? Yes, you can see it. It's good, but very dark when it goes away. Here, can you see it? Yes, we can see this area. Very good, not a problem. Okay, but it goes from being dark to whatever this is going on, right? Dark. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. We want to make sure that something's going on. Also, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I don't know if it's being used as well as should. Maybe increase it and remove other lights. I think that might be a good idea in this area. Same here. Although small light, you should also ask yourself here, this, right? So do you really need the volumetric? Red triangles, do you really need the triangles, right? I mean the volumetric, and is it important lighting? How much impact does it have in your scene, right? So what does that mean? Well, let's observe it. It's this little spotlight because you've done the radius difference, right? So you have essentially what you've done is you've played with don't actually have any spotlight here, do I? You have essentially, actually we'll do that afterwards because I actually downloaded your, I think I've downloaded your level. Isn't it spaceship interior or something? Demonstration. While that loads, let's continue. So this kind of stops everywhere, right? It's just stopping out in the blue. And the color palette, you want to pay attention to the color palette and purpose of everything. You know, you have a lot of hotspot, which generally isn't bad in itself. Red circles, very dim and specific hotspot of lighting. Why? What is the purpose? Right? But again, you know, it's pretty well lit here. That's good. What we want to think more about is not sort of working. I think this area kind of works, this area kind of works, this kind of works. What we want to work on is this one over here, this sudden black stuff. This certain darkness, this certain darkness, this darkness over here. These are the stuff we want to have a look at and work on, okay? Same here. You know, it's dark, dark, dark. You want to ask yourself, can you do the similar effect but not so pitch black, right? So let's have a look. This is the original, so let's just quickly write down light and delete all of it. Boom. And I'm gonna just keep deleting all of it. Boom. Cool. And I'm also gonna delete the volumetric, post-processing, the fog. Boom. Cool. Then I'm gonna go into force. This will clean out the light, right? And I'm just gonna, I don't mind if I ruin this one, just click save and do a quick medium and bake to clean it up, right? So now it's clean. Then gonna do lighting only. Gonna go here, put up a spotlight like you did. Okay, put it out here. Just want to make sure I actually got rid of everything. Cool. All right. So what's going on? We have an environment. You have 3 lights. Now, you don't actually, if you don't have volumetric, the trick here is, especially in game development, it's expensive to actually have 3 lights. So what we do, we fake it. But we want to make sure that, you know, it gives the illusion that it's covering a lot of area. Okay. We just want an illusion that is covering a lot of area. Okay. And normally I would turn off the other stuff as well. So I'm just going to go into project setting. Just going to quickly go into render. Where is it? Where are you? Rendering. And I'm just going to check very quickly. That I turn off this. Basically. I don't want it to do this for me. I just want to be in control for now. So I do 1000 for example. Don't follow this. This is nonsense. This is just to explain other stuff. So you do like something like this. Okay. Control save. Do a quick build. This should be a lot quicker than the other scene I was trying to do. All right, gonna go here. I'm just gonna boost this to 10, and that's fine. I'm gonna do another bake just to see if it helps. All right, that's fine. It's bouncing up. Cool. So what you're trying to do is get rid of all of this darkness, right? So you want to think a little bit about where you put the lights to create the shadow. Like here you can see this interesting shadow occurring, so you might want to explore that. And obviously you want to explore the reason behind everything, and you want to make sure that you don't necessarily have too much light either, right? Too much light can also kill the mood, so you want to achieve as much as you can with as little as possible, right? So maybe I try something like that, and then I go over here and I just do something like this. Okay, but maybe I go a bit, let's make sure it's not too difficult to do this. I don't really like this cross, but that's fine for now. Then maybe you go, okay, there's 3 light here, so 1000 is the value. There's 1 light here, so it wouldn't be as bright, so maybe you go like 350, right? This is ratio difference that we use to balance our lighting. Okay, we're balancing our lighting, right? It's going there, it's going, it's more or less correct. Okay, maybe I go even more like this, and then maybe for this I don't go, I go static only. And you know, so you have this gradient going on, and you're not trying to do too much about it. And then maybe you go like, okay, I want to have something going on over here, right? So maybe here put it near the door, right? Because you want to see the door as well, right? You want to minimize the amount of light you use as well. So maybe you do that, and maybe you go, okay, I want this light to go there, but I want this light to be a bit warmer for whatever reason, right? That's possible to have that, to think about that. Maybe you go like this, and maybe you go, okay, that's 1 light, but I don't want it to be as bright as the other one, so maybe you make it like this. And here you might go, okay, I want it to be a bit cold, so maybe you go all the way to say 7500 in the color temperature. And let's say you do the same here as well, so you go here and you go a bit more colder than white on purpose, right, to give it a bit of sense of mood. Save, and then you try and bake again. And then, you know, you gotta fix all of this stuff. That's basically what you want to avoid, is all of these things. Now, you don't have to do this. I don't recommend doing this. It's just because I want to show you. If I do 5, this is gonna end up bad. And I do 5. I'm breaking the rules, but it's just to give a quick example of what I'm meaning. Gonna do a quick bake. And basically you can see this is what I'm meaning. You want to fill in the blanks, so you know it's dark, but it's not like pitch black, right? And again, you know, I could have, if I wanted to, like in the previous example, I used this example instead, right? Which I don't know, let's say daylight. Obviously it doesn't match because it's like a different tone, different color, but you know, it's possible to do that too, in which you're like giving it some more detail. Okay, so that's basically what I'm talking about in this feedback, right? See the difference? Now, if you want to keep it dark, I'm not saying you can't, but you still want to make sure there's some mood to it, right? So I could maybe add some green to it instead. Increase it to 5, so there's a more weird green tone to it, you know, stuff you can do. And also you want to make sure maybe you don't want it to be very bright, maybe you want it to be subtle, that's fine too, right? And maybe you don't want it to be this much. I might go like on 3 and 3, you know, and I might go build, you know, and then the other ways, I quickly just put it in the post process. You know, you can use gamma. I don't want you to mess around too much with these things, but you can use EV, but we're gonna learn more about that eventually. So you know, don't have to worry about too much about it. So basically, you wanna do. Eventually, gonna learn all about this, but for now, the key idea is to learn to do that. You know, without depending on all this. You don't want to depend on post-processing to do this, for example. Okay, hopefully that gives you an idea of the contrast and the color choices. All right. So see you next week. All right.